This is the actual sign.
No,
It was easier than making a sample because the sign came down because she's already in the new spot.
Before, right?
Yes.
And that is a tree down there that looks like 50.
Yes,
It's kind of a tree.
it's
a
a
tree.
circle. No, actually it's a circle
But it
with
could
the
be-
number 50 cut out. But
it could-
I think it's meant to be clever and look like a tree
Well, I
now.
think it has, trying to be a tree bent over.
Yeah.
Does that have a fitness aspect to it? 50, does that mean?
I honestly do not know.
Was that the number of the old?
Is the number
No,
the
she
old
was at
address?
9.
No,
No,
By
it's there.
Fisherman's Net.
she does have a
It's the name of the
location in
company.
Westport as well. I don't
Well,
I
wonder
don't
what
think
the
she was
reason is
referring
have
to.
it.
Pardon me?
I was just wondering what the reason
Oh,
was to have it.
I didn't think to ask her. I apologize. I do not know. She's had this logo as her business enterprise for a few
Okay.
years now. So
Well, if it's a logo then.
So the sign is, go over the materials for us, just.
oh,
materials
it is
for us.
an aluminum background
It's
with
black.
cutout plexi letters on the front, painted to her logo colors. And so it's aluminum and paint and plexiglass. So on my application, I apologize, I put vinyl and that was actually incorrect. I was under the impression it was not dimensional. I was not working for this company at the time they sold it before. So I went and found it because she had already taken it down, and it is this beautiful dimensional sign, which in fact is appropriate in that the neighboring businesses have very similar signs.
Okay, that's good.
So this is her portion of the building. This is the front of the building. When you go around the front, you'll see Cafe Nero. And when you look to the front left of the building, you will see the Verizon and the other business down here. And the building next door has cutout lettering that says Bankwell, which is the same kind of cutout lettering here.
Okay, so it fits.
Yes, it does. See, the
And
Bankwell
the sign-
sign even has a similar sort of logo bug there as well. Yeah. I don't know if you want to pass this around so you can
Yes, please.
see the other neighboring businesses. I've labeled where they are in accordance with her.
I presume that the.
That's the actual sign, yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah,
visually
because she
good.
had it at the other location.
The sign fits
So,
the zone.
It's also
right?
half the
Okay.
size of what
The
she's
size
allowed
of
for
the
this
sign
location.
and the other zone fits the zone.
It does, however, maximize the letter height at 10 inches.
Yeah, I was looking at
Mhm,
that 10 inch
mhm.
letters, okay.
Because overall, it's only 15 inches by 6.5 feet. So that's the 8 square feet.
Do you happen to know, there's no sign lighting, there's no lighting on that portion of the building right now, right?
No, there's no lighting.
And there's no lighting left before, it lights the sign at all.
Well, I think there's a little, like, a sort of architectural safety lighting to the left of the frontage there, I think you'll see on the photograph.
Yeah.
It's just like a little
Yeah.
carriage type,
And
Light.
right. Oh, and above.
but it's not intended to light the sign.
Lights, you guys okay?
No, I think that's.
Looks
fine.
good.
It's kind of an odd spot.
I'd like to
for a light.
understand what it
Yeah,
means
it
though
is.
somehow.
All of them are.
Yeah, I know what
hotspots
you
for light.
mean. And
I
it-
think it's confusing
This
for
was
people.
What, the
But
50?
you'll have stuff. you
Well,
have a
she's got
window.
she's got a
You
very
have a
strong
window.
following, pardon me?
Is there a window?
She is a strong
or-
following.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's
she's
got
got
they're all the little paned, like 9-inch square windows, all in clusters along each side
Yeah,
of
so
the.
she can put a lot of things as a window sign if she wants.
Oh, no, because they're all framed out, you know,
Okay.
you'll see, yeah, so that it wouldn't even hold a full piece of paper, all those little window panes, I don't think.
Liz, didn't we recently approve this storefront with white?
Yeah, we
Yes.
did.
So when we did, I don't recall these 3 random,
I know, I don't
Light
know, we talked
signs.
about light though.
it doesn't look right.
I
I
know,
remember
it isn't
his-
centered.
I recall him saying he may have to shift it over one way or the other a little bit because of the framing or the structure. But
It is awkward, isn't it?
Or at least center the one,
Well,
or
I
the
think
door or
it's-
something, it's
It
just
should be
odd.
centered, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just
Well,
odd.
it seems to me Dwight said he couldn't center it. And that way they should put some right on, you know,
maybe
the
one
center and put it
flanking
on the-
each side of the
One
storefront.
flanking.
Yeah.
Is that to be discussed with this application or for maybe to talk to him about it?
Talk to
Because
him.
Well, we'd have to talk
That's
to
not
it
Dwight.
really
I
doesn't
understand.
apply to what they wanna go ahead and do.
No, I think
Those lights are unrelated to
they're
the
not
sign.
related.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't relate to that. We're just talking about the look in general. And I think it is a little awkward to have it all centered somehow, but that's Dwight's problem.
Yeah, I can look up after this and go through my notes.
I also don't remember that door. I'm struggling. I mean, this has nothing to do with.
I'm sorry, I
but
didn't hear that.
I don't recall that door configuration either.
You mean just the little tiny squares of windows and this sort of white mass?
Yeah.
Mhm. So that's.
I don't believe she intends that to be the entrance door. I think that standalone door to the left of it is where she intends
Oh,
for
really?
for
Oh.
customers
Oh.
to enter from.
Well
Well, then what's
wait.
all this? You know, you're gonna be watching people do
All right,
fitness
now-
through the windows.
Pardon me?
I said,
Now-
as you go by, the windows have showing all the people doing all the
Sign
things.
it
Yes.
that then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see bicycles and all
Looks
of
like
that.
it- is it
I
goofy inside?
don't know that there are
Is it
bicycles
goofy
involved.
inside?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, but you said. I
But
think
the
you
ho-
said
the
something about that.
the wall opposite all those windows is all mirrors so that they can see themselves exercising.
Well, I think,
It's like a group exercise type of thing. And there's a lot of mattresses and stretching involved.
lots of interesting things to look
Should
at.
there be a sign
Walk
over
by.
the main entrance?
Yeah, I know.
More exposure in
It
other location, right?
Wouldn't be my thing to exercise in front of the street, but there's a place actually on Boston Post Road on my way home that's lit up at night. It's right there with all those windows and all the ladies are exercising right in front there.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't
Our
know.
method.
Well, I
Should
think,
we
I would want a little
consider
privacy,
sign
but-
over the main door? I mean,
Yeah.
It is to a parking lot, so you know it isn't like
no, the main entrance door. Is
Yeah.
that what you was?
Well, Banquo's isn't,
They don't have a sign over the main door?
it's not over the, maybe we went through that with them, and they preferred it over wherever they put it. I don't know.
Oh, because they had multiple
I mean,
doors.
does she doesn't want it, we're just saying this again. Do you think she wants the sign showing
Um,
where you enter?
Well, I think from that was never discussed. I think she liked it over the architectural featuring there because it looks, you know,
Well, I think it fits better. The
it
sign.
fits
That
better.
size
And
much,
also,
much
I
better.
think the other thinking might also be that the greater expanse of the parking lot, you might see it better from
No, I
there
think
as
it's
well.
a good place. I'm thinking of an additional something to show. That it's an entrance.
I personally would recommend to her, you know, maybe a little sign on the door itself underneath the windows that
Or
would say
something.
entrance.
I think,
But-
but that's.
She
not
seems to
gonna-
have a pretty strong following that's very used to her because they were already in there. They're all ready to exercise and be there, and they don't even have a sign yet. So they
Well,
all seem to know where they're going.
Well, it's just a question of other people finding it if they have to go.
Hmm.
I don't know.
number on the door?
We should have a number on the door.
Which door?
But it
Street
is,
address.
Well, that building
But
is
it's
one of
all-
those
it's
buildings
all-
that's actually
there is a door in.
it's like number 1051 through something else, I think, in actuality, the whole building, I believe. But
Well, then what would be, if someone wanted to address something to them, would be 1077?
1077.
that is my understanding
That would be
that
just
is,
this one side entrance, and then the front entrances have different numbers.
I believe so.
Okay.
I think
then
that
I
might
think-
be between the postal people and,
We'll request that she puts a number on the door or on the building or something to mark
Sure.
her.
okay.
Yeah, I think if that's
Yeah.
relegated
Yeah,
right to this
absolutely.
specific door, there should be some 10.
Hey, I'm all for it.
The only alternative over the main door is even a blade sign, because you're either coming from Post Road
Yes.
or the parking.
That's
And
a
if
good
there's a
idea.
smaller pedestrian
That's a
scale,
good
like
idea.
over the door.
Over the smaller door,
The smaller door, yeah.
yeah, it's a good idea, yeah.
But that's up to her, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
So maybe we'll recommend that to you. I might put that in my letter since you'll be relaying it to her. Maybe I'll say one suggestion definitely for the address, but also there was kind of concern discussed here that if the main entrance is that other door, it's a little odd for her placement of signage.
Well, Cafe
Understand.
Nero's has a blade sign, and
Over their
that
second door.
is something that would have to go through the variance board.
A second sign?
Does it,
No, not even the fact that it's a second sign. I believe it's the fact that it is a blade sign has to go through a variance, I
is
do
that
believe.
true, Dave?
In this particular case, because there's also a hanging sign on the property.
Okay,
And the blade sign is meant for those building frontages that are right up against the sidewalk where there is no space for a hanging sign. So that's why they have to go to the ZBA, because there is a hanging sign for the property already on the opposite corner.
okay.
of the-
I'm guessing she would be delighted to be allowed a blade sign as well, and if that's something you want to recommend as a consideration, you know.
What do you guys think? I
I
think
think
it's
she
not a
would be
bad idea.
open to
I think
that
it's a good
I
idea.
like the idea.
Yeah.
like the idea.
If she,
Okay.
If she's
she
able to,
wants.
okay, well, yeah, well,
But she will have to go before the ZBA, which is, you know.
yeah.
Mhm.
You want me to-
Or alternatively, just an entrance sign, that she wouldn't have to get any special.
I think if it's under 2 square feet or something like that, and it's considered informational or directional,
Right,
that usually flies under the radar, so.
well, I think we all feel it would be nice to have something
Mhm.
there a little bit.
And perhaps the owner could address the lighting.
What?
The owner could address the lighting
Yes,
concern.
I think that's a very good point. to see if,
Okay.
so that the lighting doesn't look off-center there.
He's usually very conscientious about that, so.
Well, I think he just has other things on his mind, maybe.
Okay. So we need address number, and I'll recommend possibly, you guys thinking about a second sign, them first, create the second sign to demarc the main entrance, if that is the case.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
great, and we'll also put in a mention about the lighting there, which is, I'm trying to review my notes from our meeting with the owner when they renovated that building. I can't, in the time crunch, I can't pull up what they had, but I'll look into. I got it. They didn't do lighting, we left it that any additional signage lighting, any lighting or like additional signage would have to come through the ARB. So, we never approved lighting for that, so.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
We'll follow
well,
up
for
with
the
that.
sign,
Wait,
it's not,
yeah, before you guys, independent of you.
well, these weren't made for signage, these lighting, this is for
No.
the building.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so that's, okay?
So get a favorable report with those couple of recommendations.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
very good,
So you can go
okay.
ahead and hang up.
All
Thank
right,
you for
so
bringing
my
the
next
sample.
step then is to talk to Mr. Keating during business hours, and he will direct me from there. All right, well,
Mr.
thank you
Keating
very
is all.
much for your time.
Thanks for
welcome.
coming.
Good luck to her.
Thank you very much. She's got a real pretty space there now, so, yep, okay. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dave, one second, before you bring that other group in, I'm just letting you guys know, I'm pulling up what we did. And Rita, you questioned that door.
The door. Did we ask to have the door changed?
We said the replacement
Far
door,
into the room because
should have
there's
been
a
French
camera here that'll be
doors.
recording
Yeah, on
for
that, it was gonna be the
proceedings.
French doors there, I think
You
you
get to
just
see yourself on
You might have
TV at some
run-
point in the
We
future.
questioned him running out of room or not, remember what was behind that wall? And I
Yeah,
did,
it's
supposed to be
not
French
French
doors
doors
there.
there.
Does that work anywhere?
Okay.
Yep.
Hi. Yes, very good. Yes. Right, like I knew you. Hi, guys, all right, moving on, we have ARB number 9, 2019, this is the Mather Homestead, and they are proposing construction of a new barn and gathering space. So welcome, guys, you kind of know the drill, but introduce yourselves, and how you relate to the barn and what you guys are thinking of doing.
Okay, great. I'll probably let us all say our names first and then
Great.
I'll kick it off. I'm Lauren Swinson. I'm the Executive Director of Mather Homestead.
Stephen Keatle, architect.
Paul Salato, Salato Properties, the builder.
And so the Mather Homestead, I think some of you are now probably very familiar with it because I was just here for a sign a month ago. But we are the historic home that opened in 2017 at the corner of Stephen Mather.
Can we just have you spell your names?
Oh, sure. It wasn't easy. So Paul and then Celotto.
Great.
Stephen with a V, last name is Keedle, K-E-E-D-L-E.
Thank you. So as I was saying, the Mather Homestead is a historic home built in 1778 that's at the corner of Stephen Mather and Brookside. Many of you are probably very familiar with it. We opened it to the public about 2 years ago now. I've been the director for just under 2 years. And we are excited that we're getting people in the doors, which has been wonderful. We do some regular Sunday tours. Our activity is still pretty limited. We have our Darien 5th graders. The first group comes tomorrow, actually, and we'll have 6 of those field trips happening. So, I think it's becoming a real town asset, which is a great thing. We are proposing to tear down the existing barn on the property. So if you've been up there and you're looking at the property from Stephen Mather, the house is on the right, the barn here is kind of down on the left. And in its place, at roughly the same size, build a very also historical looking barn, but with a more usable interior space that will be our educational center. And so what we want to do in this building is have our lectures there. Right now, we have a series of lectures. We have one tomorrow night where we bring renowned scholars to town. We are able to use the O'Brien's barn, which is a private residence, sort of catty corner to us. It's very nice of them to let us do that, but I don't think they're going to let us do that forever. It is great. But we're going to wear out our welcome. So that's their barn that you can see across the way. And for instance, when we have our field trips right now, we don't have anywhere for the kids to gather before they come in the house. We can only do about 10 or 12 in the house at a time. It's pretty small and it's significant wear and tear. And so last year, if the weather was nice, which is great, we just had them outside on the terrace. More frequently in April, the weather is not great, so we had them like corralled on our tiny little side porch before they went in. So our vision is that when a field trip comes, they would pull up to our new space, they would go in, we would have a video about the history of the homestead. We have an amazing collection of colonial tools and other artifacts in the attic that we don't even have anywhere to display right now. They would be displayed in an exhibit space. And then groups would go from there and walk up to the house to tour it, and the bus would be able to leave the property. So that's it. I can tell you guys a little bit about the process that we went through to come to this team, if that's helpful before they get started on the design. So we started talking about this when I took the job. I knew this was something that the board wanted to take on. The first thing we did was look into trying to use the existing barn. So the existing barn was built in 1929. From what we know, it's roughly the 4th barn on the property. And I should say the barn portion right here was built in 1929. This portion is just a garage. This was added in the 30s or 40s. We don't know exactly when. We had a number of different builders come through and look at it. This part, unfortunately, has a lot of asbestos in it and has a lot of termite damage. So we knew we were gonna have to tear that off. We talked to a few different preservation architects about restoring this part. And the only way we were gonna be able to do it within our budget was to just basically add another building on the back and keep it like it is, to have something that was climate controlled. They weren't gonna be able to do this portion in a climate controlled way in a space where you could, say have 75 people for a lecture or, a field trip of 50 students. So that led us to Plan B, which was to rebuild the barn. And so that's why we're here. And so we issued an RFP last November, I believe it was, to a few different people. It included 3 preservation architects or builders, and then 2 other, a Darien team, and then these guys are a Westport team, another great Fairfield County team. And then as we went through the process, the preservation architects we were working with, one bowed out, he just didn't have the capacity. One gave us a quote that was just astronomical. There was no way we were gonna be able to do that. And then another one came in quite high and told us it would probably take, a year or so. And so then we met with this team who was really excited about our project and had some great ideas that you'll get to hear about tonight.
Okay, so if we can look at the site plan first, and you see here, this little light line is where the existing structure is. So the proposal is to move the barn a little bit closer to the house by 25 feet. It positions itself a little bit better in terms of bringing roots in, still far enough away, but also takes advantage of the meadow in the back, and it's a slightly more level as you move up a little bit. And then the thought was, proportionally, from a planning standpoint, first we looked at a 28 by 60, and then we found that given the use of the space, it would be better to go with a 32 feet by 57. And the inspiration of the barn is really to keep it quite simple. It would be considered either an English barn or a New England barn, which is essentially a gabled structure, very simple, with an opening, one at the gable side as well as one at the long side. So that clarifies that. And that is really, that definition is taken from the ConnecticutBarns.org. They have slightly different definitions of types of barns. This seems to fit into that criteria as either an English barn or New English barn. And then, again, trying to take a typical barn structure and then retrofit it for our needs, we have a very simple opening that faces the street, as well as facing the meadow, and they line up to each other. The one that faces the street, we're proposing to have a sliding barn door that could close this up if need be, but in general it's probably going to be open most of the time. We also want to get some natural light into the building. Typical of a barn structure would be the sash-type windows. These are up high so that we can allow for wall space to be used for exhibitions. And then in a loft area that is positioned over the entrance that faces the house, we have a stair going up to a loft where we can utilize that for meetings, for the committee, as well as a small office space. And then down below, we have two separate bathrooms, small kitchenette, storage for coats, water fountain, and then down at this end, an area that we could use for projection if someone was giving a talk, and then really storage on either side, again, either for coats or for storing chairs and tables. This current layout is really just set up so that if someone was giving a lecture, you could kind of see that configuration.
Is that gonna have a cathedral ceiling, a raftered ceiling?
Yeah, so the ceiling
So it
would
won't
go
be artificial, yeah.
all the way up, but the framing technique is regular framing, which again is not untypical of some barns. If it was an older structure, it would have been timber frame, but given the budget, we've decided to use regular framing, which would have a cathedral ceiling. There are going to be some collar ties going across to tie that together.
Right.
But the interior is probably going to be sheetrock just for the ease of, because we're going to insulate.
A sheetrock between the rafters.
Yeah, so sheetrock on the walls and
so
then up
you
in the
can
ceiling as well.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering, what we could.
But there will be rafters or collar ties every 48 inches. So we may dress those up a little bit just to give it a sense of.
I have another question about the bathrooms. Are you required to have one for men and one for women, or one for ladies and one for boys? Are you not, it's compared to a unisex bathroom, because what so many people have now? I mean, it's an expense that
Yeah,
maybe
we
you
could.
don't need. I don't know. I was wondering if there was some building code that said you had to.
Given the occupancy, we do need two bathrooms.
Well, this Darien Historical Society has an area, barn
Yeah.
area, just like that. You might have seen it.
Yeah. And I'd have
There's
to
only
check,
one bathroom.
I'd have to check with the building department on
I was
that a
gonna
little
say
bit.
that.
But when we did the
They
code,
didn't seem to have a problem with that. Okay.
when we did the code review, the occupancy, at least the code book came up as requiring two. But
Oh, okay.
we could
Well,
always,
The square footage?
yeah, the square
Okay.
footage and the number of people that could
Yep.
occupy that space.
Well, it's just a question, you maybe.
I mean, we'd probably like to take one out if we could get more storage down
Well, I was
there.
gonna say, that's
But
what
that-
I
my
keep
first
asking for
thought
storage.
was.
But that would be a conversation I'd have to have with the building
Oh,
department.
yeah, I didn't, something to think about, that's all.
And then in terms of the siding, this is a 1x8 shiplap pine that is typical. And we're proposing to use a solid stain, and Benjamin Moore happens to make one that's called Heritage Red, which would be typical of a red barn. I was reading that in the historic barns we use a ferrous oxide type paint, so that's where the red would come from.
What's it called, I'm sorry, one more time?
This color is called Heritage Red.
Heritage, right, okay.
Is that the same area that they used at the Historical Society?
Well, the barn,
There's one building at the
well,
front
the
that's red.
society
painted
itself
right
is
now.
painted red, and I don't remember whether it's heritage red, I think it's a little darker than
Yeah,
that.
there's another one called Burgundy.
Yeah, I think it's a little darker.
So,
This is the, which was, it'd be interesting, it's a good point to see, it's a similar kind of a thing. And it's a similar type of period, if you wanna look at, you know, the house period of the society is comparable.
Yeah, and
To
they're
the
painting
one
it right
there,
now.
and-
I've been driving by while they're
Yeah.
painting it, so I'm sure they know the color. I can ask.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a thought, it's close
Yeah.
to that, but I don't think it's a
And-
little,
these three from the Heritage Collection, or the, I guess the Historic Collection from Benjamin Moore, these were really the only three reds that they actually
well, I don't know if
had.
they used Benjamin Moore.
And again,
I have no idea.
maybe some others, this happened to
But
be
I think stain is a very good idea as compared to a
yes.
paint.
It'd be a solid body stain.
Well,
and-
solid, but you don't have to replace it quite as often as
Right.
a paint.
Right.
And the shiplap is gonna give you a smooth surface because they're so tight together, so you won't have any vertical lines showing.
Correct, and this actually comes in a rough side or a smooth side, but I think we go with the rough side just because it has a slightly more weathered look to it, and actually would probably take a stain a little more friendlier than the smooth
Yeah,
side.
definitely.
Do you have an interior elevation that shows the relationship of the second floor to the meeting area? It's not clear to me how that,
So this sits directly above this.
right, but how would it be finished?
Yeah, so there is with the railing inside, we're going to use some of the old boards actually from the old structure as a railing.
Do you have a drawing?
I didn't have this in here because
We have a small version, do you mean? I bet I have a
maybe.
copy. Let me see.
Okay.
I can pull it up on my computer.
That's great though, that you're able to, I know there was talk about what you'd be able to restore for the inside of the building, so you think you'll get enough?
Yeah, and we
What
probably
you
have
can-
some also maybe for a feature wall here and there to.
But
so-
is that gonna be finished inside completely, or is it gonna be,
Well, it's open to, like an open loft,
so
so,
it'll be open down to below?
correct. So I go up these stairs on,
And then that whole area to the left is open?
yeah, so there's gonna be a railing here that looks out into the
But
space.
if there's a private meeting or something, or the board meets, is that?
It's not an issue for, I mean, I
Okay,
think
I'm
we
just-
talked about that initially.
Oh, yeah, I don't think
So-
we'd be lucky to, have a conflict of a tour and a board meeting at the same time.
Yeah, that's
But
really
I
a
think we
postage
could schedule
size,
around
but that's the looking
Yes,
towards.
that's
I'm just holding it down
Is
so you
there
can
any
find
way
it.
you
but-
can think of, I'm not overly fond of drywall. Is there any way that you can
Within the budget,
come up with, well, I'd like to finish.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Is there any way you can come up with a rough interior that shows, expresses the members without having drywall?
Well, we have to insulate the building as well,
Yeah.
so that would be in between the joists, so we have to insulate that, and the sheetrock is really the most effective way to do that. Otherwise,
This is a really important property and a really important building, and so you're bringing people in.
yeah, and the house, again, we're actually saying that the house is what's the most important thing. This is really the barn is really a background to that.
The barn is viewed always together with the main building.
Yeah, from the outside, that's what we're trying to achieve, is the historic barn.
And it
There
is
is,
the
there is a
first
fire
stop
code
on the
issue
tour.
with the sheetrock that will be required by the building department, because of the occupancy, and that's another reason.
Say that again?
There's a fire code issue, so the sheetrock obviously is a fire retardant, so that'll be required for the
Can you put the
interior.
sheetrock between the beams, so you expose the beams?
Well, the beam, again, just to
I mean-
clarify, so the beams, when you refer to beams, it's not beams like an old barn, it's traditional 2x4, 2x6 construction. One of the things we were gonna do though is there is quite a bit of wood that is in the barn now, along with a lot of historic facts or features that we're gonna salvage out. So I'd say probably a third of the wood that's at one end of the barn, we plan on taking that out board by board and using that on the walls, but sort of as accent pieces
You mean over sheetrock?
over the sheetrock, yes.
So all of this whole interior is sheetrocked?
The whole interior sheetrock, yes.
Yeah, our
Including the ceiling, that's raftered ceiling that you said, so you won't even see the rafters above you.
No, because I have to insulate to
Yeah,
condition
I
the
understand,
space.
but there are other ways of,
We would though have the
Perhaps doing that.
rafters
Yeah, so
below
there
the
are
sheetrock,
gonna
yeah.
be traditional, if you think of beams, there will be traditional beams.
well, the
That
ones
will-
that go horizontally, because I'm talking about rafters that support the roof.
Yeah, so
And
the,
whether you could insulate between them somehow or other, and you could have a feeling of a barn rafter in this, in
Yeah.
the cathedral ceiling.
the only way we've done that in the past is you sheetrock it and then you do a substructure inside of
Well,
that.
that's what I'm wondering.
We don't have the budget for that.
And I should talk a little bit about the fundraising for this. So, one of our board's big goals was to do this. We are doing this with one large private gift, a first grant for the Darien Foundation, a very hopeful second grant, and then some, a very small fundraising campaign to compete that. So we really didn't want to burden the town with another fundraising campaign. I think we got the feedback that people were feeling like, wow, we just did the lights at the stadium and now we're gonna ask for, fundraising for another town asset, so we wanted to keep this small, and that does require that we keep our budget at a pretty reasonable level. So there are things like this, of course, we would, love to have the beautiful wood ceiling and all of that, that I think we're not gonna have the expenses to do, but we are trying to maintain the character. We also, to be able to have display cases, or, to have a wall that could be curated by a curator, something like that, that's where we actually are gonna need the sheetrock too,
No,
that
you
that we can nail into.
But, okay. The one, in terms of the windows, I have a bunch of barns myself that I own, and there's a lot of these ganged windows, especially over any of the barn doors. And I'm wondering, I think it's a very wonderful feature of these particular, this is an 1835 barn, and I really find that I personally think that's looking awfully suburban and not very barn-like with the Marvin windows and the Marvin doors, and I'm wondering if you could perhaps somehow or other think about this type of a window, and if you have a barn sliding door that will go across that, so you'll have a barn look. Well, you say it'll be open most of the time, but I think it would look better closed.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, instead of the paned, suburban 1990s house, it looks like a barn, and you'd have plain contemporary glass doors without any panes at all, just plain glass, and then you pull the big barn door across on the railing outside, a separately hung door, and then you would cover that up.
Yeah, so you can approach it that way.
Yeah, I know.
Where there are contemporary elements in a historic barn. But if you were to say I was going to build using historic window sash, there would be a certain window dimension size to those sash.
Yeah, and that's more expensive, I realize, right? Because these dimensions are very much this time period in this
Yes.
particular barn.
Correct. It's really just that use of, for the doors, right, which we need for a practical purpose. Again, we can go where it's no.
Now, I personally, I don't know what other people feel about it, but I think I'd like to get away from that look of the Marvin doors.
No, I agree with you.
I agree.
I don't like those doors.
Yeah. And there's only
I don't
one
know.
door, as I understand.
No, this.
So there are 3 doors.
Well, there's one on
But
the north side and
there's-
south side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here, and then
Mirrors.
to enter.
Mirrors
But there's
on the other
just
side.
one door, and each one of those entrances, there's just one door.
Currently, there's one operable door, yeah, in
Well,
that.
there's
Because
one
I think
door and
that's-
2 side lights.
Exactly.
like
I think
this.
it needs to be a bigger entryway. If you're having kids and double strollers and.
Yeah, so we're talking through this, whether you could
Okay.
do a double door, how it would, how it would look. I think, so our initial, request was to have something that we could open up that would, A, have the daylight coming in, when you're in the building when the doors are closed. But B, have something that you could open up, if you're looking, well, you can envision. Let's say we have our Fall Harvest Fest, that's kind of our, probably from a numbers perspective, biggest event. And it would be great to be able to open this building up, right? To be able to open the front and the back, instead of right now having things like all over the property, we could have like the food vendors, right outside and have the flow. So that's why we wanted the doors, you know, on both sides.
Right,
And
but
these
that's
are-
great.
We're
One
talking
door.
about the
Yeah,
narrow.
Yes.
Which we, no, it's
So
a
it's
30
not
it
opening
meets
it
the
up.
code requirement 36 wide with a panic hardware to be able to open it. So to have 2 doors open, that's fine also, right? We could make a double with one fixed.
Does it show that in the plan?
Currently, it's shown as one center active door.
Right, but you could get 2 glass sliders that open like this.
No, they need to be swinging for the code. They need to be
Oh, you
swinging.
can't have sliding
No,
doors anymore?
no,
Okay,
no.
And we looked at.
okay. Now, why is that, by the way?
Keeler
What's the
bar.
rationale behind that?
Because the slider doesn't really
It
operate.
sticks, then you
Yes.
got, then
Yeah,
you're
so
So
it
dead.
you
needs
would
to-
only need one set of swing doors, the others wouldn't act as egress, right?
The one that faces the house needs to be, the one that faces the street needs to be a swing door, but the one to the meadow could be something else.
And I mean, I think we'd have to talk it over. I mean, I think from a board perspective, we're happy to consider a double door here. I
Mhm.
don't know that that's a
I'm
sticking
troubled
point.
that the glass lights are all a different proportion.
Mhm.
You've got one proportion in the doors, one proportion in the transom, one proportion in your clerestory windows. That troubles me. I just don't.
You
think
mean the
it's-
individual grills, like these little things here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the paint sizes aren't all the same.
And why you picked 3 over 2? That's an unusual proportion for.
Well, why don't you just use one set of gang that we talked about here, like
Yeah, I
that?
do love those.
Why
as
don't
a
you do that? That's so
traditional-
common in this time period, above the door, instead of having the individual lights.
Yeah.
You see, this
So-
is a-
Yeah, that would be
picture of it.
probably
So
12
that
inches
one,
high, right?
yeah.
Because of the pane size.
Looking at this.
Yeah, I put this nice too, they're small, they're like
Yeah,
a
they're
foot,
small.
yeah.
Because that's what all they can do
Yeah.
is plate glass size, so it would be a
Right.
small individual.
There's, lots of.
Yes, yeah.
and
You're
they're all
talking about like
similar.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the panes, at least on this barn, are comparable in terms of style, you know,
Yeah, and they'd
because
be,
they're all bought the same way.
Correct,
so.
right.
And they also, and I've often I don't know what these little square ones in the eave of the building, that's another common thing to have, you know, it's a window like that. Are you familiar with that? That's
Yeah.
also, right, to me, that also is a nice touch, because that's quite a plain area there.
yeah, there's one wall that is very plain.
I'm looking right for your hand.
Yeah, see the plate on this, on the
I
west side.
haven't seen this in person, but wouldn't the east elevation be considered, you know, the front of the building? Is that?
So I think if you're coming from the house, yes, we would use that as
And
our.
that's the front,
as
that's
the
what you're
quote-unquote
looking at, right there
main
where
entrance.
Sandy's.
This,
Yeah.
right, let's say you're at the house first, and you've pulled in that way and parked, this is what would be kind of the main entrance. And we've talked about that, how to designate that, we've actually looked at a few different ways. I mean,
That assembly is actually small, you know, significantly smaller than the assemblies on either side of the building, so it doesn't read like that's the front of the building, and it seems like even if you're not using it as much as the entrance for, you know, large gatherings, I mean, it still represents the front of the building. Feels to me like it's kind of begging for another element to establish it as that, whether it's an opening, under the gable, which would have been, you
Right.
know, the opening to the hayloft back in the day, or whether it's, you know, a small shed roof, or whether you use, you know, the barn door element on that facade either as well, or as, you know, instead of on south facade, but, you know, it feels like right now it's secondary to the other elevations, and I'm not sure that's the way it should be.
The length of the building would have normally had the larger door, right? So the end gable,
Not necessarily.
you know, something like
Well, if you
that,
look
right?
at all
So-
the
No.
barns we have, that is the case, yeah.
No,
this is
The big doors would be on the
We
On the
have,
long side.
long side.
well, this particular is the end gable, that's the main entrance to this one.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that's always
so it has
case.
the small
Yeah,
door,
so,
right, this one
right,
has the
that's,
small
that
door.
is the main entrance, it's not always on the wide side. That's for the cows and things like
Right.
that.
How you access the barn.
But your point though, which is it needs some kind of designation, we totally agree with, and poor Steve here has drawn like two different.
Well, we had an
Little
overhang, we had
roofs,
an
we took
overhang
it out.
over there at one point. And, you know, as we looked at different examples of barns, didn't really find any that had overhangs.
Yeah, and when you looked at it from the side, it just looked a little wonky. But what our current proposal, and this isn't in here because we haven't even thought about landscaping yet, is that I'm trying to find the current entrance. Where's my little friend? So this is, kind of what, there's just grass in front of this, right? We would have, or we have a gravel driveway that you can't see in this picture, but we would, our current proposal would be to use the landscaping to, make that designation. So you'd have some kind of path, imagining going up to it. I'm not a landscape architect nor a historical architect, but some kind of shrubbery that might lead you right to that.
What about ADA
And then perhaps a small sign that says
accessibility?
educational.
Yeah, so currently it meets that with the door, with the width of the door.
But with
right.
the gravel driveway and the,
We've talked a lot about that too, so, we just can't pave the driveway, right, and that changes the character of the property. Our proposal was to do, for this part, that we would have let's imagine the school bus pulls up here, you would be able,
That would be in this, in the front right here, right?
yeah,
This-
so we would have this be
They pull
the
up
ADA accessible into this
on the
building.
south side?
South, the
I don't
south
know.
faces,
It was, when we did our initial, with the house, to make the house ADA accessible, you'd have to change the house, right? So that was waived in our PNC rule, so I think the rest of the property would stay as it is, and we'd have to work individually with people as they needed help mobility-wise around the property.
Going back to your front entrance there, top
Yeah, this one,
corner
yeah.
we're looking at.
Yeah.
I feel like, so what you did by putting the windows in there is you tried to give it some sense of that, of that being a larger, different, main entrance. Putting the larger set of windows above it and kind of do that mirroring on the second floor,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, actually, the loft is up there.
Well, yeah, no, yeah, I know.
And so that was to actually get light in there as well.
Yeah, no, I understood that. But I'm slightly troubled by the actual windows, because as my look, I haven't found any barns that have windows of that shape and size.
No.
where
It's a
it's
little bit more of a
traditional. So I almost wish, like Dave was talking, I had the idea, as you guys, it sounds like you guys have been dancing around, there's an element there, maybe there's another way to relook at a window set on that front of that
Square,
building. Yeah,
square windows and like.
square
that.
windows
Like that.
depicted differently on there too.
Most of them, most of the windows are square, interesting enough, they are.
Can you show that again?
Would you bring it
Sharon?
back? Yeah.
Most of the windows are smaller.
Right, right.
Right.
Because it would have just been a hayloft, right? You wouldn't have had someone working up there.
Of course.
Or a board meeting or whatever it is. This is the Keeler Tavern Barn, if you're familiar with that one. They had a really interesting, it's a door.
Very cool.
So, we
Well,
can
that's
look at something
appropriate
like
too,
that.
if you have a
That's cool, too.
hayloft,
Yeah.
to have a door there.
I
Yeah,
understand
but they're
that.
still getting the multiple paints, you get the light.
Right.
Now it's accessible.
Definitely, I like the idea of light, and I think what you're going for is the light there. I almost wish I'd see it in a more traditional way, modernized, but more traditional way, like the traditional type of windows, but then maybe more of them, which would be a more modern way of doing it, or the door would be a cool way, and then,
Yeah.
more panes, or I don't know. Did you guys think about that, or what?
But we
was-
talked about, do we have panes, do we don't have panes?
Okay, yeah,
And so it becomes more of a hole in the building. And that truly is, I think, somewhat subjective in terms of, because we also talked about, do we make the windows white, do we make them red, or do we make them black?
So you're keeping them red?
We're gonna go red,
trim.
yeah, red and red, yeah.
And what kind of eaves are you having? Are they wide eaves,
Yeah, so there is an overhang, it's a 12-inch overhang.
12 inch?
Yep.
Do you look up and see underneath, like I'm looking at here now, some of the structure underneath it?
No, there would be a soffit underneath it, like a
It's a soffit?
yeah.
And that's another requirement?
Well, we could put gutters on this thing, which we need to, again, in an old.
With what, like?
Gutters, it'll be the gutters, right, even though historic bond generally wouldn't have them, but because of the necessity to take care of our water runoff, we need to be able to direct that
You
water.
have to have it.
I have a store corner on my property, and they didn't put the gutters in, and you wouldn't believe the disaster we
Yeah, so-
get so much, so I understand
Well, I have
sadly
nothing-
your need for
I
that.
have
You
nothing
could
but broken
extend the
gutters.
eaves to give it a little bit of a shot, more of a shadow line. Could
There would be a shadow line, I mean, this is probably closer to that type of overhang on this one.
What, you're talking about your vertical
Could we,
strip
could,
line?
The
could you
eaves,
do it
yeah.
where
the
there's not a
eaves.
flat soffit, but still a flat end?
Yeah, you
of the
could do that,
rafter
you could
panels?
bring that up and in there and show
I
those.
feel as
Yeah.
though this is an opportunity, budget or not, to take delight in the creation of this building. And so I don't see on this drawing any beautiful detailing for runners for the sliding panels. I mean, I'm not seeing any effort put into creating a little jewel. To me, this isn't detailed, these are just, these doors with transom windows, and you say that there's a sliding panel, but I'd like to see the details of the runners and the hardware.
That's
And,
fine.
and on the main elevation, I still don't understand that, those could be casements, I don't know what you're putting there, but that,
They're casement windows, and we could
that
certainly,
could-
You can't have that in a barn.
you know, I
Occasionally.
wonder if you could consider reconfiguring that whole elevation and introducing a barn door.
well, we
And
had,
changing the fenestration. The
we did have-
fenestration is, I'm troubled by the
I
fenestration
am
of the
too.
whole building.
we had a barn door on this one, and we took it off and decided to put it just on the main side.
Just what was the logic behind that?
Well, again, we have a pretty tight budget that we're working with, so we have to really use it from a barn perspective, that a barn would be a utilitarian structure, as are all these, right? So any embellishment is a very fine
Well-
detail that is in keeping with that. So the runner and the slider is gonna be very taut and tight and appropriate. So where we may be departing from that, as I think I'm getting the comments, is the fenestration of the windows. So we can certainly look at that. The doors, again, the doors are a more modern type of door, right? We want to get glass in there with light in there. So it's either we take it with the approach that they have panes or they have no panes at all and say, no, it's a modern door in an existing
But you
opening.
slide you have the barn slider over across that door.
Correct.
So you wouldn't necessarily see the clear glass all the time. It would look like a regular barn door. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
and again, it's just one of those things is, how often do they close the door? Is it a door?
Remember, I'm the only employee.
So,
If I'm able to close the door, I will try.
I'm thinking of the one on the south side more, because
Yeah.
you have a slider there already. You know, but you said you wouldn't ever use it, but I sort of think maybe you should use it.
I
And
think
I
it would
don't
be
see
quite
it-
theatrical for the kids to get off the bus and
Yes,
to
and
listen to
open
the
that
rumble
door,
of
yes.
the doors open and be like,
I'm gonna start working out.
But
We'll make it happen.
but I can't
So are you
imagine a
thinking,
sliding
though-
door would be
I'm just
that
confused. So
expensive.
collectively,
No, there is a
grills
sliding door. I think
on
maybe
any
that
of the
got lost.
windows? Is
Yeah.
that-
there's one sliding door, but I would
on
like.
the front side, like
What
the side
about
you would
putting
see
them
from
on the side that you see from the house, so we're not looking at the glass doors, and then the side where the bus actually pulls up
I think we probably have the budget for one.
at the side?
My thought would
Can
be
you
this.
do it so that you can,
Well-
in 5 years' time, do a
like add more to
fundraiser
this?
to?
Absolutely, I think there are
Well-
definitely going to be things like that that we add over time.
Well, if you want a door from the, why don't you just have a regular door with windows around it, you know, as compared to the set of doors, with one door with the two. It wouldn't look as it wouldn't look as, it's dating it to a certain time period, a little bit, I think. Just a plain wooden door, you know, with nice, regular square windows, a bunch of windows around it would look more like a barn than this looks like someone's
Yeah.
patio, and they're about to go out and do a barbecue for their
But we
neighbors.
do want the light. The
Well,
light is
you
really
can put a
important.
lot of
I
light
think,
by
to
swinging windows across there. I mean,
I think one of the worries was the more you start cutting windows in, it starts to look like a house, right? So there's that
No, I
fine line.
have the opposite opinion of that. I think you're making it look like a house with the, jumping all these doors together with the door and the two side windows as one element. That's what looks like a house, to me. And it depends how you place the windows, you know, you can, and if you could have large square windows, but it would be just different than having just the doors as a package. Well, I keep looking at this stuff, I shouldn't look at this stuff
I
again,
like the
but
idea you
this
had
is-
of
this
the
is
horizontal band of windows though.
Right.
And
Right.
right now we
That's the door.
have fenestration that looks like this, but could you get the
Right.
same amount of light in by
Well, the
focusing
gang,
on
the
the
gang
windows
windows.
above and having more
Gang,
solid
yeah.
entry
That
doors?
long side variant and the gray one.
Yeah, I like
this
the
one
idea.
here,
Yeah, clear doors
Well,
there,
that's a bunch
no
of square
panes,
windows.
no divided
Look
light,
at that.
clear doors. So, and then with a sliding, a traditional sliding, simple hardware would be depicted all the time anyways, you don't get, so kids could see how a barn should have been done, and understanding that the need for a glass door there,
Right.
and then vertical
It's a nice
windows.
idea.
We're talking the south entrance here.
Well, the gang windows,
gang-
the
the gang
gang
windows.
windows
That'd
is
be-
like
that'd be-
one pane above and one pane below, and it runs right through here.
Isn't that just one pane across though?
That's
No, I think these are separate
Oh,
windows.
right, yeah.
Though,
I
but
mean,
I've
that's the
seen
way-
ones where it's just one, like that's,
Oh,
that
really?
one's with the double, there is a lot of them.
Well, they
Someone
have,
had
I think
something
there's
here
a
that was
certain,
like-
but that's a very definite period of time, that these windows, so you see them a lot in these barns.
You're looking at this. I will be honest, this is a kit barn.
That,
A new, brand new kit barn. This is in the backyard of Indira and someone's.
Well, they're
It's not
using,
historical.
yeah.
But
no, but they're using the same, the same windows. But
I
they
mean, we can
usually,
consider it. I'm skeptical about the light, but,
well,
you know, we can
Was
talk
there
it
any
over.
talk of doing a cupola so it could bring light in that way? Or is that another
That's a-
budget buster?
Yeah, so when we looked at cupolas are very specific to types of barns.
Right.
So the cupola would be sometimes quite decorative, but it may be for a dairy barn, or it may be for a tobacco barn where they need that. So we were really looking at barns that don't have them.
Right.
And again, we're looking at it from kind of a practical standpoint versus a decorative standpoint, and also a budgetary. So we sort of make that argument across the board. Like, if a farm was to build a barn today, what would he do? Even though we're emulating an older barn, but even then they're looking for maximum space, most economical, and easiest way to get in and out what it is. So we've kind of embellished a few things, obviously with the door, but any cupola, there's a lot out there. So what do we use as a model if we were to use a cupola?
to bring light in, you could have
But if-
four sides of
bring-
light coming right down the middle, maybe.
And
But not
again,
enough.
it would normally be, well, what kind of windows do you put in there? Well, you wouldn't, so it really became something that became a lot more subjective than really we felt we needed.
Okay.
Again, the Fairfield Historic Society did a wonderful job with a series of barns for their museum, right, next to the town hall there. And they have a particular language of the cupolas. And I think it was probably an onion barn, so the onion barn had a particular type of cupola shape that just was generated at that time. So they have a variation of all those, which are purely decorative. When you go into that museum, it's a little disappointing actually, because you expect to see these giant spaces, and they're being closed down for climate control and everything else. So I was very, very excited to go in there, and I was disappointed thinking, well, that's not what I expected. So.
And I think actually in this instance, it would be practical for you. So I guess, was there a reason why you chose the English barn other than just for budgetary purposes?
Connecticut,
I assume.
Well, it was actually when I was looking at what's the ConnecticutBarns.org, there were just types of barns, and this actually fit that criteria of either an English barn or a New English barn, meaning it was long gable
New
end.
England barn,
New
not
England
New
barn.
English barn.
No, well,
New
New England barn.
Right, okay.
yeah.
But just in terms of cupola, this had a fabulous golden cock on it at one point, and a helicopter came by and stole it.
Really?
So very close.
Not when I had it, with to the prior owners. They went through the whole valley, this is up in the Connecticut Valley in New Hampshire, and they took about 5 or 6 of these great big, wonderful,
weather
various
vane?
decorative, what am I thinking of, what's the
Weather-
word? I can't
yeah,
think of
weather
it.
vane?
Weather vanes, and with all the weather vanes and all the decorative stuff that goes with it. But these were cow barns,
Uh-huh.
so this is a New England cow barn
Right,
cupola.
right.
And so that's just a little incident about
Yeah.
the value of some of these weather vanes.
I know I had thrown in my opinion, whether it's right or wrong on the cupola with the windows, as I felt, given what was there now, again, it is a residential neighborhood, that if there was this basically, that it will be lit, right, if there's windows, that it just would look like a house, a new house versus a barn, keeping it a little darker versus
Well,
this sort of big light, and it just, in deference to the neighbors and whatnot, it just seemed, if we kept that simple, it would look more like a barn and less like something new. Certainly would bring in light. That was the 2 cents I had thrown in when Steve was drawing it, because I thought, again, we do cupolas on new homes, not on historic homes, and again, especially here where I think the idea was to try and keep it simpler, that was what I had thrown in. I thought it was getting towards that house sort of feel.
I
Are
don't
you
see the
working
house,
with
but
a
it could
building
be
committee?
pretentious.
Do you have a building committee? Is that it? Yeah.
Yep.
How many people?
There are 4 on it. It's Margot Condon, if you know her, Maeve Zamsky, Graham Foster, myself, who am I missing? Kevin Treesh.
Well, this last little pitch for these square windows, put on their angle and in various.
Can I see the picture for a second, please?
Yeah, you can have them all.
What was the history in 1778 when the house came? What was the barn? What would a barn be used for? Was it for
Well, they raised a
horses?
lot of cows in Darien.
But was this particular?
I don't think,
know.
we don't have any records telling us exactly what the barn was used for. So this isn't the original barn.
Right.
So, and the barn was
No, but
even
the house
located
was
where it
17,
was.
built in
Yeah, it was built in 1778. It was
1778.
roughly a 100-acre farm that stretched all the way up into New Canaan, all the way over to Norwalk.
So it was a working farm.
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Okay.
everybody did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
So
a
then
work.
we know it had cows, and then you can
Well,
follow
yeah,
it to
Darien
equipment.
had a lot of cows. It was interesting. They had a lot of open fields. And they ended up having a lot of shoemakers too because of the cows. And they would make the skins. So the barns were used in that time period in a big big way.
So we now know that this barn should look like a,
Not necessarily.
barn
I
or
mean,
a
it doesn't have to be the same
hay.
period that the house was
but it's
in.
not a tobacco barn.
No, it wasn't
Because that's a
tobacco.
different.
Or
No,
dairy.
We didn't have tobacco.
And yeah, so we have no details on the original barn. And it was actually, from what we have been told, it wasn't located on the property that we now own. It was probably across Brookside. So this is the fourth barn that's been on the property.
Yeah.
We don't have any pictures of any buildings.
Could we also talk about the black asphalt shingles?
Over the roof?
Now, which one are you having? Which asphalt? Did you name what they were? Is it black or is it weathered wood or what's it?
We talked about doing black, just black, simple black.
Was there a reason why you took black?
It was just simple. I mean, we could do weathered wood as well. I mean, we didn't really have a, you know,
So,
just-
again, this is maybe where I throw in my 2 cents of it. So I find weathered wood to look fake. Again, it doesn't look anything like weathered wood.
Well, black doesn't.
No,
What's
but it
black
just
look
seemed
like?
to be a little more of a traditional roof color versus a
Well,
weathered wood.
well,
I mean, if you like weathered wood, we could do weathered wood.
Well, you know,
I hate it.
Slate, oh, you do, well, that's.
Yeah,
all right.
I guess, because
So there you
literally
go.
every spec
That's all
house,
right.
How do you really feel?
But
every
I
spec
think
house
I
that
mean,
gets
the
done.
black looks fake, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you know, the new fake slate looks pretty good, I think. I don't know what the price is.
There wouldn't have been a slate roof
Well,
on the
not,
barn.
well, some, I mean, this particular barn I'm talking has slate roof, but it's later. It's not, it's 1880 or
Yeah.
1890, they put the slate in. But what are you saying they painted the roofs black?
No, just in terms of, it's a simpler look with the red. It's just a personal opinion, it's not right or wrong. Again, as a builder, 80% of the houses that get built, not so much in Darien because they're wood roofs, but certainly in Westport, in Fairfield, the roof color's weathered wood, and it
gets
doesn't
to
look
you.
anything like, yeah, and so when as a builder,
Well,
when
it
I see
looks-
a charcoal roof, it's not really black, it's charcoal,
Well,
offset against the red,
But
I think it looks
I
nicer.
find what I like about the weatherwood, it matches the trees perfectly in my house. The trees are almost identical color as the roof, and so it all kind of blends in. But of course, there's not that many trees up there. It's kind of open, but, well, it's all personal, but.
Yeah, I think it's something we're married to, right?
And then we
Yeah.
were like, let's just match the house. So
Yeah.
I think
The house
we'll
has
figure
got
it
a
out.
good shingle roof.
But the house is not quite black, no.
Yeah.
Any exterior
But
lighting?
the current barn doesn't match the
I'm
house.
sorry, say that?
Any exterior lighting?
We will need to have a light by each door. So we haven't really spoken about the type of light, but there's an onion lamp type light that has a cage to it. But we probably would go with something that's,
This is.
A barn lantern,
This is
maybe.
kind of what the barn committee was talking about. But
so that would be obviously a much more turn of the century,
Yeah, so-
1920s type of goose lamp, right? Again, what would they have had back in the day? Well, probably none, other than
They have a
lantern.
barn lantern. that you
yeah,
carry.
exactly.
And I think the onions go more to Nantucket.
Yeah, so, but they do, you know, there are some tin lamps that are very simple that we could look at as well.
Should that be part of this application?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think so,
I think it goes with
but
the
that's, I think the
windows.
lamps out there have to do with safety and lighting, not necessarily having to be so fantastically historic, do you think?
So,
I mean,
I do.
this was just an
yes,
example.
so
I think
again,
they have to be
maybe you could pass that.
historic.
Best I
Yeah,
can.
but
So
they
not
this is
don't-
Keeler Tavern
Well, they do
again.
how it looks.
Restoration or
Well,
not?
they do in
Home
terms
Depot.
of how you decorate, how they're decorating. But you don't want someone to hurt themselves at night, you have to have some lighting.
Yeah,
So
with
they
it being
can
so
walk
far
down
from the
there
house.
and not fall and sue
Need
you.
some landscape lighting, but I don't know, that's certainly not
Well,
historical.
that's the
It
next
would be
thing, the landscaping.
Safe.
Yeah, we have a lamppost about halfway between the barn. Luckily, we don't have a lot of nighttime events. But, you know, eventually, they can do it all, who knows.
I think for fundraising, you probably should consider something really inspirational. I mean, we found in fundraising for schools that no one wants to write a check unless they're inspired by something. And so far, this presentation I don't think is inspirational, and I think you may want to consider how you approach
If you wanna get,
the presentation. I mean,
in other words, if you wanna fundraise for something,
make it fabulous, and you may find more money will come in.
Maybe.
I mean,
That would be a wonderful,
It's
Well,
surprising
wonderful
how
result, for
people
sure.
don't have that much ability to read elevation drawings generally, and so I think you need to,
you think of drawings,
Keeler
something like
Tavern.
a,
yeah, some kind of a
something with color,
renderings,
something.
Keeler Tavern, right, sure.
with details and,
It's really,
Liz, I don't know how to go forward from here. I think we need to summarize.
That's
Yeah, I
nice.
mean, I can give you guys some summary, but I think there's a lot of things you need to read. All three of the east, north, south elevations, I think we all wanna have those rethought, like the different doors, something, barn doors on, if not the north elevation, at least the south and east side we talked about, maybe a simpler door on the east, the main entrance, and that's where you get money, go for a simpler door, and let's rethink maybe more windows if that's your lighting. I wrote here about possibly rethinking the second story window cluster up there and doing something a little more square windows, maybe multiple ones, or other ideas, something more historic there. Even on there, like, you know, that, I know you talked about lighting there, I think everyone would be open to more,
This is what I'm gonna ask about.
to more windows, I think just more of historic windows, if you would, like, even if it's uncharacteristic, there would be that many windows, I think that would be more.
That looks like a
I
railing.
think that's a
Is that a railing
showstopper for us, because
inside?
then it really doesn't look like a barn. You know, so I hope we can come to a compromise on that.
On what?
To have more windows.
Well, that
No.
one,
Well,
the
it's
gray
just-
one we showed, they had quite a few windows.
yeah,
Well, I think,
Yeah, so-
there's a bunch of them there. I have, well, that's not enough for
No.
them, but you have to add a lot.
I think we have to just rethink lighting though, because I think that what we're, I think, up here across the board, guys, is the doors across, like,
Yeah,
no
it
one's
sounds
favoring
like
the
the
type of doors,
doors-
first of all, yeah. So maybe,
But
even
it's
if we
fine.
did a simpler, like, all glass door, what you have, and just proposed even sliding barn with some really cool, old school hardware, maybe that's a solution.
Yeah,
And
some barn
simplify your doors,
hardware.
I
save
think
some
we
money
have
there.
that, right?
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
do.
we
I'm
have
sure
that.
you have
We
some-
have that.
oh,
We have a
we-
sliding door, we
but
are
it doesn't
salvaging as
show.
much of the
you
hardware,
have to
oh, the
bring it out.
drawing.
What
Sure.
about a door that, like one of those old school type doors where the top opens, but you still have the bottom?
Yeah, I thought about
Like a
those
Dutch
too.
door.
as a
Dutch
main
door.
entrance,
Dutch door,
yeah.
Dutch door.
Is that what it's
Or you
called?
can have a
That would
Dutch
be
door.
kind of neat from.
Those are expensive, actually, though.
Well, you have to
I do
start
like the idea.
somewhere
I do
Going
like
back
the idea of that.
with inspiration.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so you're putting me in a
And then you
hard
get
position.
lighted.
I know, we're making a lot. I have
Well,
one
yeah,
quick
it's-
question
yeah.
on this. Is this a railing, interior railing going across?
Yes.
Where they're sitting,
Correct, yes.
so they don't obviously
Yes.
pitch over the
Yes.
side? And so that,
And we're talking about using the old material from the old structure there to create that
the
railing.
railing,
Yeah.
okay.
But again, you know, if I came and said, hey, the barn looks like this, there's no windows, no doors, what would be the response?
No, of
I
course
mean,
we want windows. I'm not
but-
saying that we
well,
don't.
Again,
I
but,
think
but,
it's-
you know, the barn, again, these little, if there were cattle in here, the doors had to open up to get light in, stuff like that, right? Especially if you're working, again, milking a cow, you need to have those windows to be able to see what you're doing, right? And typically, you know, these are called barn sash, which are often 2 feet by 3 feet. There's 2 wide by 3, 2 high by 3 wide. That's very typical of a barn, and it's actually called a barn sash.
Couldn't you make a larger sash than that size and get more window out of it? But it would be the square, it would be the same proportion, but just larger? So you're taking that element of that time period and expanding it for new use? If that would mean making windows to order, though, I
Yeah, I feel like I just,
no
I
good.
respectfully want to say we came here trying to really demonstrate the history of the barn, minus the doors, which I hear. And now I feel like we're inventing new windows a little bit.
Well, we are.
Trying to give you more light more light in a historic.
Well, I think this actually makes less light, but we can certainly do, let's say on the south side where we have the barn door that's closed, there are 3 doors, we can get rid of the fenestration so they're just clear. Get rid of the transom window and put a window like that over it, both on the front and back, right, or the long sides. And I think that would then allow for light to come in, still get enough light coming in through the doors. The door that faces the house side could certainly be a wider door, and put 2 left and right, but it also doesn't gain us a whole lot of light in that space, but it's certainly a possibility. And then the windows above it could certainly be larger, type sash, and the one like the diamond window that you had up in the loft, that could certainly do that. But we would be relying a little more heavily on artificial lighting at that point to illuminate the space, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
And if you consider a cupola, you'd get a plentiful amount of light.
Yeah, and the cupola though at night, I think we really don't want to have a beacon. We'd rather not do
Yeah,
that.
and just when we looked at all the different barns, the ones that were truly historical did not have cupolas. The ones that we saw that were the kit barns or other barns built to look historical, they did have cupolas. So that was the selection of the cupola for us.
Well, this
Well,
is
light is
original.
your first consideration.
Yeah, but so are these,
Yeah,
I have 4
They're all
that don't
different.
have a
They're all
cupola.
different, one's more formal
Yeah.
and bigger and whatever, but I'm saying there were cupolas in New England.
Of course there were. We
At that
just,
time
we
But not
chose
with
a
windows,
barn.
usually with vents.
Yeah, we usually with a vent or something.
Right,
not with
no,
windows.
the window would be your modern touch. I mean, you're mixing old and new.
Well, that's what we're trying to do
good.
though. That's what we're trying to do with
I
the
know,
window.
but-
So it's a question of where do we go from modern and
How we
old?
mix.
Exactly, and then that becomes really a subjective point, which we're taking into consideration to help bring in perhaps more traditional barn elements such as the long
Right, or
sash.
there's another long sash over there that's the same on the other side of that barn, which is
Yes.
the same thing.
What was your solution again? You mentioned doing it just solid glass doors without any.
Yeah, without any panes in them. That way they really
That
look
would,
like
yeah,
openings.
that would bring in the light.
I think that's a really good idea.
Then you'd slide the barn over, door
Yeah.
over it. and you-
Because they take away a lot of light, any muttons or, whatever.
And the transom you said, we were talking about,
Yes,
versus the divided light on top, maybe a transom, a more traditional transom, that would be a.
And the doors.
Oh, the transom over the doors, and then the
And
glass
the
doors.
doors.
Yeah, so in this,
Oh.
instead of having these would go away, and that transom, the narrow one, would go up higher. Because if you go up higher, you get more light anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could move those, bring them up, those become no panes, right?
Right.
And that could repeat on both sides, really, from the front and back.
Yes.
Toss some square windows wherever you needed them, or like, because they do a real set pattern.
Yeah, and these can be broken up to being smaller, or, so they're not all together. Or we could do something like the inn there where it looked like a hayloft that was
Right.
a panel and.
But you could also throw in, another, the high windows that you're talking about, the hayloft window, right? That like you guys showed in a few of your.
Yeah, no, actually, I do have a mechanical space up there though.
sending
So
it
that
out.
actually
We could have that
I couldn't do it on
high.
this side, but we
Got it,
I'll see
okay.
it.
Okay.
Oh, here, could you even make a more interesting window where you have the 3 casement windows?
What do you mean? Explain your.
With the 3 ganged windows together, could you
This
do
is
something
clever.
like the cooler, smaller shape window in that location? It's below the mechanicals, it would be below your drop ceiling.
Gang together or separate? You said
No,
three
like
traditional
a
square?
single, like the diamond shaped window or circular window or whatever, could you just drop that down to the location where you have 3? Get
Oh,
rid of
so
the
that-
3 entirely,
And
so have like a little feature window there.
Yeah, I would.
The diamonds often look good up in the,
Yeah.
I know, that's a
Point of the
mechanical
roof.
space, I
There's
don't
no
know
space
how
up there,
low
you
you
said.
can drop it
No.
before it doesn't really
no,
look
that's
like,
true,
yeah.
that's true.
But do you
And are you
lose
guys thinking
glass?
these more square without grills? Is that what you're?
No,
I know, I like-
these would remain with
Those are
the
good.
Yeah, I
bangs.
like the
Good.
square.
Good.
So, yeah,
The
those are good.
square is what really is the barn-like part of it.
And I think from what we've talked about of keeping the upper windows a more linear transom and glass doors, just with no I don't think you've lost any light except for that east facade upper window, question mark.
And I do accept the first criticism that was made that it looked suburban, and that's so we should get away from that, even though we're looking at the model of what's been done, that panes or no panes, and then it becomes what is the modern intervention for the older shell, if you will.
Which I still struggle with on this entrance door, because a modern entrance door, you wanna call activity to it, but a modern entrance is like so against it's the opposite. An old barn door is the opposite of calling attention, right? They're functional. I don't know.
And again, that would be probably the spot you'd have a Dutch door with two side lights, right?
Yeah.
What, is there an entrance, you mean?
Yeah.
This,
there's-
the
Plain
east
door
side.
with two side lights?
Yeah. You said you had other ideas for that? That entrance door, you guys had played with some stuff?
We had talked about, an overhang, and I don't, please correct my terminology here,
No,
but
we
we
had-
talked about,
yeah,
something
we
sort
talked
of
about it.
colonial, something that looked more barn, we ended up taking them all off, because
I think it's great.
nothing looked
And
traditional.
draw back anyways, that's
Yeah.
more expense
Yeah.
that you're even,
The only other thought I had on the doors that might take a little bit of heat off of them is if all of the trims and any muntins on the upper windows are red, if just at the doors you had like a charcoal or darker.
Yes.
So it just looks like a black
A hole.
opening
A
from
hole,
the
yeah.
street or
No,
something.
I like that, I like a black door.
Yeah, and it just, you
And
pay
that
attention
says,
less to
I
them.
am a door too, I mean,
the door itself, you're saying.
the door
is black.
itself is black.
Like you have a glass inset or something like that.
But from
but-
afar, it looks just like a hole.
Right, so when you're driving
Oh,
by
well, you have it.
Right,
and you're looking
interesting.
over, you're seeing just a square proportion opening more than.
Interesting.
Because usually black doors have white trim on them, so you can see that there's square.
We really wanted to stick, to here's the historical versions, like the all red, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
versus the black.
Oh, well, the black door, though, I think, I like the idea, because it gives the idea of more of a hole.
I mean, it looks like there's a hole that was filled in because you had the barn doors, so we could pass that one around maybe, because that one also has.
That's across the street.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
you
that's
close
the
it up
one
with the
across the
sliders.
Yeah.
That's the O'Brien's across
Yeah.
the street. I'm looking at our historical guys, I was looking for the cute.
Rita, that has a black door, or that's just that's
No, it's all red, but it does have
wood?
panes, and it has panes in there.
It's a wood, like a
Of
wood
course.
door with some panes.
Of course.
Which I think we all like, but I think you're scared about the light, you guys possibly, that you're not gonna get as much light if you're going with a wood door with just some panes. Or would that be
Front
satisfactory
entrance.
for the front entrance?
We were talking, I thought we
We're
were
talking
talking about
about the
black
east
doors.
entrance.
Yeah, the east
Oh,
entrance, yeah.
The
Oh, I'm
east.
just talking about the black, painting it black. We had preferred to stick to the red, just because it was, that's historically what.
Would it be a little, you're not talking about a lot of black, though, you're just talking
No, I
about.
think it's
Because
glass
it's-
doors and the
it's a
glass
glass-
door frame
just the
becomes
frame,
black,
black.
so that it
Like a
reads like a
storefront
single.
door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a kind of a nice
Can I
compromise.
ask
And
about
for you guys,
the foundation
If they
You
go
system?
with
can
all
kind of
glass.
do what you want, and from
Is the
street
foundation
view.
system just exposed concrete, or is it
It's
got a
gonna be-
stone facade, or?
It will be purged, which is like a stucco type finish on there. So in traditional barn, if it was block, they would purge it, which is like a stucco
Okay.
kind of coat on
They
there.
stuck
What
over it?
color is the?
It would be, it's called purging, which is like a
Instead
limestone
of just,
coat.
was it a native stone
This
foundation?
is,
Yeah, we don't, well,
Or you get fakes, I mean, you get the little
Facade.
Yeah.
veneer.
So it's a,
Stone veneer.
so it's a budget item, you're not gonna see much at all of the foundation, we're gonna keep it to minimum to code, which is about 7 inches. So in order to do stone would be almost silly.
Yeah, and we've talked about going,
but you
down the
buy
line, I
it,
think that would be top of the
We
list of
buy
something
this,
to do.
veneer. with concrete.
But I see
I all
that
love
there's
this
a grade change.
A little bit.
So at some aspect, there will be a lot more of,
Yeah, but it's, again, if it was a rubble stone wall, what they would often do, not so much in New England, but they would take the lime mortar and
That's
just
interesting
coat
way
that
of
to
doing
protect
it, though.
the brick or the stone, whatever it's made out of, field stone. So it was a lime mortar that they just would spread as a purge coat over that. So the argument we're making is that they're purging that
I think I
stone, we
like the
don't say.
sliding one better.
in what color?
It'd be a grey, it'd
Pass
be
that
grey.
down to them.
It'd be good, the greyish colour.
Well, that's the Ryans across the way.
Yeah, the traditional wood.
and if you are worried about light, I mean, you could consider a wind, I don't know, what did you you say you were gonna do with the ceiling up here? There's gonna be cathedral all the way?
Yeah, except on that,
Except for the
that elevation, there's
offices.
actually a mechanical space above the loft. There's a mechanical space, so that window would not be
Oh,
bringing
that's
light.
okay.
Yeah, though on the opposite end, on the western, I think it's the western end, we could put a window in there, which is a very blank wall currently.
I mean,
Well,
you probably
Oh,
want them
but
to
the west,
match.
but the
though,
west
right?
end doesn't have, we want the windows on this end, this is what people
I was saying you
are
could
trying
do
to do.
one here and one there that would match and would bring light from both sides. I mean, what is the light during the day? Where is it coming in?
It's mainly coming from the southern side, which is,
You mean those doors, that
Stephen Mather.
doors
it's
on
from
the
the
south?
yeah,
That's your
main.
main, and, well, maybe you should try to get more windows over there too. There's not enough light for that.
Dave,
But there's also a projection screen against that wall.
Right here.
Yeah, possibly,
There's
in
windows,
that,
then you're,
yeah.
unless you,
Yeah.
You
You could do, we talked a lot about the window, or we're talking about the far side. So it looks at the woods, there, I mean, you can't, you can't see it from the road or, you know, from,
Does this,
Any
where
properties
does
around
the
that?
stairway go?
we just wanted to maximize what we could do with it, whether we wanted to have like a large hanging up at the top on the inside at some point, you know, if you're doing like an American flag, say, or, you know, or something. But we've talked about, do we have a window, you know, up high over there? Down low, we do wanna have this projection screen that would come down so that we could, you know, display a video.
This is a
And I wanted
closet
to
for
be backlit.
storing, I'm sorry,
Yes,
for storing chairs.
Correct, yeah.
And then this is
it's just
a
extra storage
closet.
space.
are you gonna have, is that gonna hold 76 chairs?
Yep. Yeah, that is actually based on a wheeling thing that contains, I think, more than 84 chairs, but it's, yeah,
Okay, good.
it's a particular chair stacking roller.
So how tall is that closet?
No, it's like an 8
The
foot.
door's supposed to be like.
No, it's an 8 foot, it's a regular size closet.
So going back to that east, that your main entrance, east side, I think that we threw out some like fun ideas. I don't know where you guys are netting on this stuff, but like one is simplifying the doors, right? Maybe going to a traditional just
Right.
wood door. Okay. Another is keeping your all glass doors, what you have, right? And then proposing a sliding. Davey even drew one here. Sliding, another version of a sliding door on there. Simple again, simple hardware, simple wood. A third, if you guys are really liking the divided light and the space here, about painting it black, right? So it reads as a whole. Like that would be something.
When you mean paint this whole.
Yeah,
area
painting.
black,
Yeah,
that's-
painting it black. But
that's crazy.
yeah.
But
No, I think you're talking. But if you simplify the door, maybe like
I
with the
think
French
if you had
doors.
just
Or,
one door, you wouldn't have.
you wouldn't have the divide the side lights.
So then you
Yeah.
could have one black, but then you have to redo this up here because.
But yeah, you guys were gonna possibly think about another window options up there, another window set or.
So I think, just so I'm understanding, it's particularly this east entrance door
Mhm.
that's the concern, okay.
I mean, just, you know,
And
this,
south.
again, that end of that
And
barn
south.
has
And,
windows.
but the other ones I thought we had
I mean,
ideas on about
so-
if we were.
I mean, that end upper window, I mean, it has series of windows.
Yes, it's good, I think that works well, I like that better than the
Separated.
Marvin.
Yeah, so I think
Separated
we
out.
need a number of windows up there, right? It may be-
Right.
To bring light in,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also if you're in, because it's potentially an office as well, if people are coming, you've got windows where you can actually see, oh, someone pulled into the driveway,
Right,
you can hear
right.
it, but you can see
So-
through to the house.
I think that's
So
good, because I
that's
think we
on
talked
the
about
east side.
there
Yeah, it
needing
should be
to
on
be
the
another
side.
element there, like it calling, you guys said like calling for another element, we, Dave, you opened up with that. So maybe another window pattern up there, something like that would be an interesting way to depict that as the main entrance.
And if they're smaller sashes that are divided, then,
and then you're talking about putting this on your main
East side.
entrance.
East
And then underneath it, have a door with two sliding doors going across it, below that window where the
Yes.
flag is.
yes.
Well, that will bring more light in up there for the meetings that you'll have in the conference room.
And then, yeah, it was a 2 over.
But again, that, you know, it's, I mean, that's a contemporary window, it's not a,
Yeah.
No, but
nothing
it,
historic about that.
but it looks, I don't know, it doesn't look
It's
like
like the-
Marvin so much, but maybe it is. But it also relates to all the other windows in that barn.
In that one.
Mhm.
So what's the ceiling height in your conference room?
It would be 8 feet, because we've got, going all the way up, but I've got a mechanical space above that.
8 feet ceiling?
In the conference room
In the
above,
loft.
in the loft, because I have to have a mechanical space above that.
Well, you're gonna vent out the side of
So I have,
that wall from the conference room ceiling to the cathedral ceiling?
you know, we're gonna have we're gonna have to have a row of ducts going through the space up high to be able to
So
get
you don't have to duct out this wall.
up and out.
I'm just
yeah.
thinking whether you need to use that entire space, or whether you could, do it here, because it would give you light, it would add to the design if you could have a window here, match it here. But I guess it depends on how much room you need for the mechanical equipment that you have.
It's a pretty good amount because it's 2,000 feet of, these walls are roughly 14 feet high, which by the way are similar in height to the barn that's there now. The idea was to keep that same dimension of the barn.
On the bottom, 14
Yeah, the
feet.
barn, not the garage, it's kind of
Right.
been added, but they're
Right, I think that's a good idea. to keep-
also. We had talked about, there's a rather large sliding door that's there now that we're gonna see maybe if we can salvage that and put that against one large wall
Right.
inside.
that.
The
Yeah,
door's
it's very
enormous.
cool.
You've seen
Yeah,
it.
you can, Rita was talking about some interesting hardware, or whatever, if you can get some of the antique ones, that does make it look better.
Yeah, there's dozens upon dozens of
I
things
know.
that have been tagged inside, that,
Right.
forgetting about the wood, but just
Right, but
historic things that are gonna
that
be
helps the
throughout.
door a lot.
Yeah.
One thing we also touched on, but I think we never came to like a thought on it, was the eaves and the soffits. I don't know, do some people, you guys have comments on that, or, I think we talked about deeper eaves, but like you guys weren't.
You mean overhang?
Overhang,
outside?
yeah.
The overhangs?
Uh-huh. Or just more detailing, more, Rita,
Yeah,
speak
we
to that a little
don't-
bit more.
We don't really have a detail, but it would be nice to extend the eaves and have more depth there and perhaps expose the rafters rather than close it with a soffit so that you have more of a sense of the structure of the building.
And that's fine, we can do that, like these, they really just come down, so you've got the roof rafters coming down, and it just follows the shape of that roof rafter, but, this is a timber frame building, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so in a timber frame, these would really just be purlins as part of that roof structure. The way that this roof is built is with essentially 2x12s,
Yeah.
so there'll be a tail that's outside of that, but that tail will be modified accordingly to.
Yeah, so we could do it so there's not a flat, I'm not an architect, but, so, the way it's drawn now is this is flat, but we could eliminate that flat so it looks more traditional. We wouldn't expose every 2x, because that typically would have been covered over, but it would have, the underside of the soffit would be angled, which I think would give you more of that look versus just flat coming across, which might look a little
Yeah.
more house-like.
Yeah.
Looking at a lot of these pictures, right there, you can't see from that elevation, but that's exactly how they would be.
This one
There's
has,
a-
this one has a soffit.
Yeah.
That's a soffit.
That is the soffit, yeah. But some of these, but none of these have exposed rafter tails, which that does get a little pricey, because they're actually fake, because
Yeah, they're
it is
fake.
framed with 2x12, so
Yeah.
they'd be fake.
But I hope we haven't added too much money. We might have saved some money with some of these.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I've been trying very
Never the
hard
case
to
with the
make
building.
Basics and then add
without
the
trying to make it simple,
frills
you
and
know.
they're not gonna do the frills.
Yeah,
I like the
that's a good
soffit
point.
idea, I think that would look nice, and
Well,
as
you
a
said
builder,
you
it's not
had a
gonna
good point.
really affect things too much.
Sure. He said you can always look at this as a two-part process, get the basics in and then have another budgetary discussion.
Absolutely. I
and
think
add the
things like the
frills.
stone foundation,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that was in our initial
Yeah.
request for sure, but it's something we could
So you can
certainly
do
do
part
later.
A and part B and then add
Yeah.
them.
But it has to be part of the application.
Yeah, it does have to be, it has to be something
Oh,
that's
interesting.
anticipated.
Okay.
You have a
Yeah.
master plan,
Yeah.
and then you elect to
Phases.
address certain things. I mean, like, we didn't really discuss the black asphalt roof, but it's a
I do
lot
wanna
of
go back to
roof,
that. I do do
and
that.
I'd like to see,
Is there a color you'd
Sample.
like?
it's not just the black, it's the texture of the roof. I think we wanna see some samples.
Yeah, we always have to see roof samples.
Sure. But I'm just wondering for direction, is there, so we can't do a wood roof just because the cost is.
No, of course not.
But it would, and for shingles, it's typically architectural shingles. There's no, there are styles, but I don't think anyone would like, they look horrendous. But, so it would be the deepest architectural shingle we could get, and then the color,
Well,
again, I don't know
what
if
about
there's.
lighter charcoal gray? It's
Yeah,
gonna be
again,
darker charcoal.
Yeah, I think it's a
Well,
board
we're
thing,
gonna leave
yeah.
that one up to the building committee anyway. I don't
Yeah.
know
No,
that.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
feel strongly about it.
Yeah, I don't
think it's
either,
fair.
I'm not, again, it was my 2 cents, but you guys
Well,
wanted what to
well
go
then,
with.
well, I hate to make you have to come back and see us again, but it would be great to see what you might.
What's on the
when you
floor?
come up.
We need,
Just
Oh,
wood,
it's
definitely.
wood.
I believe it's wood. And then it's
Yeah,
being
yeah,
turned.
just wood.
It's just wood.
Yeah, just
What
wood.
kind of, like,
I'm just saying.
Just like an oak type floor.
how's it finished? Is it?
So it would be traditional, you
regular
know,
wood
poly,
strip
regular
floor?
wood strip flooring, like you'd see
You
in
don't wanna
any.
find some wide board someplace, too expensive?
Yeah, but,
You can find some, Mary.
Well, I could.
Someplace they're tearing down, you find.
Well, I have my sources for them, but
Well, I think
they
part of
do
that-
cost a little more.
As part of that too, we talked about the not exposed rafters, but the exposed beams. I mean, I really think there'd be some beauty in that to go in and for kids to see and get some sense of what, how barns would even, I don't know, I don't know how to do that economically, but I
Like the
think that-
walls or the
on the
ceiling?
walls, I know,
The
so
walls.
sheetrock walls, and then on
But some
top of that,
beams.
some sort of,
some
yeah.
exposed beams.
Have
Yeah.
some exposed
Even if
beams.
it's just
Coming
like,
across-
it's just a look, it's not foundation, but
Right.
even, I don't know, maybe you can,
Really?
yeah, have you seen what they've done at the Historic Society, how they did that? How they-
Beautiful. The
It's
Historic Society's beautiful.
Beautiful, how they.
Oh, yeah, I was on the program.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, but that,
Add some character inside
That
this barn,
was-
because you to walk in and have like the sheetrocked whole barn with like, you know, it's like,
right,
the kids, I don't know, you kind of lose.
well, the society
Part of
was
the
a
education
restored,
there, maybe.
original barn.
Certainly something.
It was put
You said you're
together.
gonna use what you can from the existing barn? but
Yeah,
there's
so
nothing
there's
big enough?
there's a big portion,
That
not
would be the second-
nearly
that
enough
could be
to
the
cover all the
second
sheetrock, but
stage.
to have different sections of the interior,
You
sort of
mean on
as
the
a
walls?
theme on the walls, yes.
On the walls.
Yeah.
There's
What if
there's
you
a lot of
did
wood we can
vertical-
If you want-
resalvage.
what
If you want walls
vertical siding
to
coming
show
with
paintings
pine?
and display, you really
What's
can't
that?
have
Sit
wooden
down.
walls.
No, the
Instead of
thought was
sheet-
more like maybe there's a slight entry area that maybe that whole area
All
could
right,
be
well then if it's one
completely
old
covered in
area
wood.
that's all united, I think that has a better
Yeah,
idea
that's
than
what I was
spotting a
referring to.
wall.
Oh, yeah,
Like-
so I think our
Like when
vision,
you
a lot of
first
that
walk in
is.
here, one of the ideas was,
What,
again, if we
into
get
the-
enough wood,
into the men's
that this
room?
whole area be covered.
Well, no, imagine you're coming in the east
Yeah.
entrance. We would like for all of the wood in the foyer to be the salvaged wood
Yeah,
from the barn.
salvage.
All
A
right,
lot of
so
it is determined by
that's
how much
really
is
nice
actually
idea.
salvageable,
Coming
but.
through vertical siding wood, just pine. instead
Yeah,
of
did you guys think
sheetrock.
about like a siding, like a
It's not
tongue and groove inside, or?
No, it
Well,
is,
you're talking
and
about
it is
the-
more
for the
expensive.
ceiling?
I mean, saying
You
wood
know,
on the walls
inside
as
of
opposed to
the-
sheetrock, it's.
Well,
Yeah,
Significant.
it's a
and
factor
well,
of 6.
ask him, I mean, if, what about tongue and groove pine and put your insulation behind that and you have a wooden
Vertical
ceiling?
tongue and
So again, it's
groove.
it's just a cost issue, I mean, we could,
But
I
that
mean.
costs a lot more than sheetrock.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
It's a
quite
factor of 6 at minimum, if not more.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we still have to do the sheetrock for code, so it's an additional cost, it's
Oh,
not,
you mean you'd have to put it over the wooden?
we have to put over the
Well,
sheetrock.
that doesn't, we can't do that.
Got it, okay.
And that doesn't
All right, I mean,
work.
Yeah,
that makes good sense then.
yeah.
Well, we have to talk to the code people about historic barns for the future.
Yes.
That's
There's
another
a ton of
thing.
precedence for
Get
this
a hold of
project, I'll be
that.
honest. And the Historical Society, while they do have some of the beams in the corners, they do have quite a bit of sheetrock, and they use it, and when you guys have
Right.
been
Well,
to
you
exhibits,
have to
I mean,
have
it's amazing
The
what they can do
walls,
with that exhibit
If
space.
you wanna put paintings
Yeah.
up, you have to have
Exactly.
sheetrock. You have to have something, and you have to cover it with something that's not gonna damage it. You can put things in and out.
Yeah,
Without pulling out all the sheetrock. So the type of sheetrock that you have, if you're gonna be displaying anything, is something you have to think about. If you want to have
Yep.
some paintings and whatnot, and changing displays.
But we could look at the beams
yeah, I
going
mean,
up.
I would love all of
Yeah,
this if
yeah.
you can.
But I mean, but at least, but the beams, I think, is something where, again, it's something that we could figure something
Yeah.
out, I
That
think.
you could apply.
Applied, yeah, I'm not sure if they'd be every 10 feet or so, it looked like
Well, I
it
have
was
about
some.
4
Dimension.
18th century beams in my garage, if you're interested.
Well, again, in order to get enough.
Wait, before you negotiate them, talk to me. Wait a minute here.
That's amazing.
No, it's not amazing, it's just that I have a house and.
But again, you don't want them too often, like at the Historical Society, you know, with the displays.
Right, there needs to be some space
It
for
can
it.
be a problem because they have that track system and,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
they
know,
don't,
how
they
they-
don't have a solid walls, no, but they manage to display pretty well. And
yeah,
also.
but they
keep a
don't have
long-
the beam, I mean. you
No,
know,
they
the-
don't have it all the
Yeah.
way down,
There's space.
but because you have to have some of that. And, but they manage to combine it, I think, to get.
Oh, yeah.
reasons.
So do I mean, I think we've kind of like, you've taken some notes, and I think we've got some ideas. Do I need to recap here, or I'll write you a letter, and I'll put all our stuff in, so, 'cause it's been a lot. But,
And so we,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just, timing wise, we're currently scheduled to go in front of P and Z at the May 28th meeting.
Okay.
March, April, so you'll be back to us before then, good.
Yes, so,
Okay,
so that was my question.
So come
we
back,
need
yeah,
to
come back, yeah, absolutely need to come
Can we
back.
have a
Okay.
list of, so it was, what I have is the rethinking some of the doors, Eve's soffits overlays, which I know nothing about, so hope you guys caught that.
I did, yeah, I got that.
And the roof sample.
Roof
Right,
sample.
then you
Yeah.
should bring that.
With the black.
New elevations
Okay.
for north and south.
New,
New
yeah,
elevation
Yep.
drawings.
yeah, north and south elevation drawings, right?
And
Yeah,
the
and
east.
the
Yeah,
entrance.
part of the door, yeah,
And the
entrance,
east,
the
and the
east.
east entrance,
East
we
and
think
west.
is good.
And deciding
Color, I think we need to color.
Maybe just for reference, knowing what the historical
the
society is
official-
doing.
yes.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
reach
great,
out
but
to
just,
them.
as a comparison, what's historical society is doing, and like, you know, having
Yeah, I would
picked
be
a color
curious
and what
about
that.
that.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them
I think that red
tomorrow.
is too red. I think it's
Red.
gonna be, it's
Yeah.
really red.
And,
Yeah.
and I think,
Really red.
I think so too.
I think what we may be able to do is take this and actually apply.
Yeah.
I don't know. if
Oh,
that's-
perfect.
just
Good
so
idea.
you can
Oh,
actually
that's
see it
even
on the
better.
plan.
Other
Doesn't
end
have
is
enough
probably.
black
That's
in it.
great.
So I think
Transoms we
we can
talked
actually
about,
apply
the
it
pride
on
and
this
transoms
See.
of,
See what it looks
the-
like.
Or
and
if you
south
could,
entrance
I
doors,
could
so the-
say, well, the same color as the
divided light
Historical
some of the
Society.
doors.
So because, I'll tell you, the lights are not so good in here,
East
and if we
entrance,
can
thinking
see
wall
it
elevation, we're thinking
on a
it's
building
gonna be
outside, it's even better.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And,
Barn
and
doors even,
pictures of the doors and lighting?
Yeah, for the light, for exterior lighting, correct?
Lighting.
But I
Yeah, you
think
have to bring
someone had
samples
asked
of
for a
exterior
little more
lighting,
detail.
not even actually the real
Right,
sample, but
and
pictures of what the
Like what
lights
the
are.
slider looks
are
like
thinking
rather than
of.
just a flat
Hardware.
And the
in the
hardware,
hardware, yep.
the hardware,
Yeah.
the doors.
And my, I
The only
think.
thing with the hardware, I'm sorry to interrupt, it have to be a picture of the hardware, because.
Sure, great.
Right, no, you don't have to
Love
bring
you to
it.
reel it
Pictures
apart.
of your car.
But, no, I'm thinking the building,
Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, maybe she mentioned lighting, but, and in here, the lighting, we don't have full spectrum lights, so that it's always distorted. But.
But this is red, I'm sorry the outside
No, but I
is
said,
red.
I think even the building committee, if you wanna put the paint on that, you look at it outside.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you probably don't, but you don't forget, that's always important to see it outside in the different lights.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so.
Color the Mather House is so subtle, I would suggest you consider a red that has more black in it.
Yeah,
That is a very orange red.
I think so too.
It is
Yeah,
just like.
again, this was just all the reds that were the historic
maybe-
colors.
maybe we
So
could-
I have to look at some
Farrow
other.
and Ball. Try
Oh,
that.
we
What's
can't
his
afford
name?
the
You
whole
can
thing.
have-
Sorry, at $100 a gallon, isn't that way?
But you
You
can
can
match
match-
a Farrow and Ball
You
color.
take Farrow and Ball
Yeah.
colors.
You like that
and
barn
it's
red?
Benjamin Moore.
So they have a color
But
called,
just be
I've never
finished.
I'm sorry.
You
that
take Farrow
works
and Ball.
successfully.
It doesn't
and you
work.
bring
It
it
doesn't
Really?
down
No, because
more
the
and they
base
will
of Farrow
copy
and
it.
Ball is
Okay.
So
totally
it won't, may
different.
not have the exact
had
depth of Farrow and Ball,
horrible
but
luck
you
with that.
absolutely can do it.
They say
So
they
you
do,
limit
and it
yourself
doesn't,
to-
it's not the same.
No,
And that's
It's
interior?
And I'm, that has, I think.
I've
it's
had great
bad
luck
color.
exterior.
Interior, I've had
I've
a
had
problem.
bad
That
luck
too.
with both. Maybe it was just whoever was mixing it, but it's
But with paint, we have to see.
Oh, yeah, another sugar day.
I think also this one is, doesn't actually exist. This single one here, I think it's in your stairwell.
Yeah, I did one.
Yes, and it's up high, is it up
Oh,
high?
good catch, Dave.
I mean, you have three
Is
here
this his?
that are here and.
Yeah, I think it just
three
didn't show up
here.
on the
Rita
plan.
wanted you to see it.
With this one.
Is it out or are you moving it?
I think it's actually, it just wasn't shown on the plan, because up high in the stair, I believe. I'll check that.
You're
Oh, so
expensive,
it
if
should
they've
be-
got.
Yes.
Oh, actually, oh, God, it's in the
That might be
stairwell.
good.
Just didn't make
Oh,
it.
It's
really
in the
good.
stairwell.
Oh, that's good.
So, well, you want it to be in the stairwell.
There's
don't
some-
you?
we were passing
Well,
that
it's-
color chart around just because there's something called barn red. If you look on the lower,
Yep, that's a, yeah.
maybe
That's
that's a little
one.
less
This one.
blood red.
Is that,
Well, what
It's just
color
one,
did
it's an idea.
Brian's use of
That's
it?
better.
One
That's
across
better.
the hall, one across the road.
And when is your
What color red
I
is
like
that?
the dark green.
Let's take the exact date.
I do second Tuesday of May, which would be, the 14th, no, 21st. No, wait, it's the 21st, it's third Tuesday.
And the deadline would be?
Dave, when do they need to get their revised stuff in to be on the, well, we could just slot you in now for the May 21st meeting.
I think the barn red looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's a little less,
When do
right,
we
we
get
could do one
drawings
of
into
those too,
Stacy, Dave?
and see if,
Well,
you know,
check, I think this.
When do they need to get
Historical
revised
Society
drawings
has a good
into
color.
Okay.
Stacy to
Find
make
out what
our
theirs
May
is.
21st meeting
A week
a
before,
week before?
but if we got them 2 weeks before, then we could at least send them out electronically to you, and you could comment back initially and say, looks good, or problem here, or whatever. That would be more productive if we got them 2 weeks in
Like May
advance.
10th, something like that.
Yeah, so he's saying like, yeah, May 14th is the deadline to get them back, to get them here to P and Z. But if you wanna do something, if you'd like halfway through, like, this is what I'm thinking, are we on track, not on track, what do you guys think of this? You could do electronically ahead of time, but this is some idea, if you wanna open up that.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to get it to the board as well, they can look at
Right,
it.
right,
and
true,
so
okay.
I just wanted.
But by May 14th for the May 21 meeting.
You know, I've been so disappointed because I can't find your website at all. on
Oh,
Google
mine, yeah, it went
Businesses.
down, actually, it went
Yeah,
down
we're-
recently.
I was
Well,
like,
I know, I'm just
wow.
looking and looking, so.
I know, it went down,
When
it crashed
is it
over a week,
coming
couple weeks, when I have time to get it back up, but I haven't been able to. So I'm
all
sorry
right.
about that.
No, that's all right.
Do you have your own firm?
I
that
do,
you're
it's
running?
Keith and Lee, yes, my wife and I.
Where are you guys? You're in?
I'm in Trumbull.
Are
Oh,
you
right,
at home
right,
and
right.
you're working from
Yeah,
your home?
working
I
with
thought maybe when I looked at the address.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Since we don't necessarily need the window on this elevation, could you put the heat pump or whatever you're gonna do in the ceiling on this side?
No, because I have all the loft up there, so I need a space, like a loft to, is that above the office space.
Yeah, I'm saying, if you put your mechanical equipment on this side, because you don't,
Where the projector.
we don't have a
should be,
window
yeah.
on this side, we don't necessarily need one on this side. If you put your mechanical equipment up here, run your ducts out this way, then you have full height ceiling, you could do your window up here if you wanted to, if it worked better for the design.
I would have to hang and create a room up there, though, right?
yeah, so because I wasn't looking at the drawing, but, so you need access to the mechanical room, so that's why, because it's in the loft, you have access, there'd be no access on the other side to get up there. Needs to be serviced and.
So I actually have a little attic space above that loft area.
Right. Okay.
That's a good idea. I like that, Dave, because you could really open up your conference room
Yeah.
a bit there and make it even more light and more height to it.
We need to wrap up
access that
because
from
we
the
have to
outside
leave the building by 10.
Good thought.
Liz, we need to wrap up because we need to leave the
Okay, guys.
building by 10.
Is that when you?
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
thank
right,
you very
look forward-
much.
We
Yeah,
need
you
to
guys
leave
did a
the
great job.
building
I mean,
by
and
10.
this
No, I
is,
know,
there's a
but
lot of
I
elements
didn't-
here, a lot
I
of,
remember
you know.
going to meetings that went beyond
A lot of
10.
moving parts,
Is
a
that
lot
new?
of places
Is
for a lot of people to
Yes.
please.
that 10 o'clock is the deadline?
It's not an easy task when you're working with a board on one side and a board here and a wife at home. Good luck.
She's not that.
I know, that's what I'm
Yeah, that's
saying,
right.
it's gotta be difficult.
Just send her next
No, we
time.
actually work well together, we're just out of each other's reach.
Oh, good for you. I would kill my husband if I worked with him.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone, thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you for listening to us.
No, absolutely.
Guys, to keep things moving, are the guys from the, Federal Realty here, or do we?
No, they're not
just
here. They
administratively
just sent in
approve
that
it?
report if there's any,
Okay.
I think that they addressed all the current concerns that you had.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
I don't know if you guys got a chance to review the final report
look
for
for it.
Realty. I've been really pretty diligent about tracking the changes they've been making, but, and everything they've been spot on all their details, so, I'm good with it unless someone else saw any flaws or anything.
I
that we
didn't
missed.
see any. I went over it
Okay,
pretty quickly.
okay,
Okay.
all right, so we're
We'll send
approving,
it on to planning and zoning.
okay, so we're approving it to go to planning and zoning, Federal Realty
Right, okay.
signage program, okay.
And the minutes, I get that.
That's good. Any other business before we approve minutes? And I want to welcome Leslie to our group. Leslie, can you give a 1 minute? I don't know if your background is so immense, but maybe try to sum it up.
Undergrad in architecture, master's in landscape architecture, so that.
Okay, so you can bring all the landscaping in, that's wonderful.
Yeah, she
Your
thinks.
master's was in New England Barns.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's what you're earning now.
Yes. I think we all
But
got
we
it.
have one architect, We have 2 architects.
Development.
Dave and 2.
3.
Pete.
I'm-
Now you are.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't getting to that. So you're an architect too. I'm a lead architect. That's important.
Architecture, urban design and plan preservation.
Yeah, yes, you're joining like a historical, like a preservationist, historical design preservation, a designer. And-
Interior design.
Yeah, you did interior design. Marion's as our historical.
She's the town historian.
Town
I'm
historian.
actually a historian also, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and Allison's a true story in the
I'm
day.
what?
Yeah,
I'm glad to know that.
yeah.
You didn't know.
Would you like to take
No, I
over?
know, because I,
Like something.
20 years
Anyways.
later, we're finding this.
Leslie, welcome though to the board. We're glad
Thank you
to
for
have
having me.
another member.
What's your last name?
Another-
Macaulay.
Macaulay, another
Well,
present member.
It's kind of a crazy time, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I've sat on a board with you in the past.
Oh dear.
Tree Commission.
Oh dear.
All right, we'll circle back to that. Did everyone approve the minutes?
Barrett
Yes.
has 2
Tell me.
T's.
Now I'm going upset.
February.
I realize I lost my agenda, so
Yes.
Barrett has 2 T's.
Barrett has.
2 T's. March
Where?
19.
Yes. Got it.
And I didn't get,
You have that here.
I don't have the February
Barrett
minutes.
has.
Yeah, I'll finish that tomorrow. I'm
Oh,
sorry, I
oh,
lost my
what
agenda. and
But it's here.
Barrett, the bookstore, Barrett bookstore.
Oh, is it? No, I thought that was.
Okay.
oh, okay.
In the minutes.
Oh, yeah, no, it's here to be approved, but it's not here to be.
Oh,
Well, I thought that's what you were doing is
Yeah.
approving now.
Okay.
Doing our
It's
approval.
almost here.
So we approved March, February will to come, will be sent electronically or
When
or for the next
I-
meeting.
To be continued.
Okay,
Okay.
terrific, then we'll adjourn the meeting, it is 9:43 p.m. Thanks, guys, so we can stop recording, and then we can discuss.
Forgot all about the fact that you recorded this whole time.
Yes, yes.
All right, we're adjourned, Channel 79, thank you.
I completely slipped my
Always
mind.
feel so badly for these presenters when we just, yeah, well, this isn't gonna work. We don't like this either.
Well,
I think we do have to be careful redesigning.
Yes.
If we're gonna keep on discussing stuff, we need to continue the meeting. We can't
Oh,
just keep
sorry,
on
yeah,
discussing
yeah,
stuff.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay,
But at the very least,
we got someone.
whether that we like the design or not, I believe that the application should be complete. And
I
all this
agree.
talk about, well, we were thinking about it, we had a door, we took the door away, we're thinking about lights, we're thinking about a path.
Yeah.
They should come in and have a complete application with all of the
Or the
details.
samples.
It shouldn't be on us to say, what about the details for the windows? What about the details for the doors?
Yeah,
That,
I
you
agree.
cannot make a decision, you're just looking at a simple line drawing that you can pull out of a hat in one afternoon.
yeah,
And then it behooves us to say, because every design, the success of design is how it's detailed, we know that. And it irks me that we're put upon, like, I hear a lot of apologizing, I don't feel like we should be apologizing. They're not complete.
No, it was very.
And I don't care if they're in a hurry or they're raising money or I have no sympathy. You come and you do a complete job. And when you do so, you can have a complete and thorough and a good analysis. And this enrages me, this kind of behavior, laughing and it's not a complete application. And it makes us look badly because we're not responding to a complete design.
Well, we did
It's
respond to
just,
certain.
oh, we looked at barns and we like this and we thought about that and even just the simplest question, is it a fixed door flanked by, is it an operative door flanked by fixed lights?
yeah.
That's part of the presentation. On the east elevation, we have this kind of a door, and it's got this and that, and so I'm frustrated because I think they behaved really badly, considering you had already had a meeting.
Yeah,
I think they thought it was a complete application.
Yeah, I think they did too.
I think they
Oh, I
thought they
don't think
thought it was.
they don't have experience for it.
No, I-
don't think
I
they
mean,
The
do.
architect didn't do his job.
No,
He
he
had
did
no idea.
He doesn't
No,
seem
he
to have
doesn't.
a background.
You're right.
He's, I don't know where
Yeah.
he came from, but anyway, but we
Sorry,
did, but I
I'm
hope
so
that they received our comments about different
Would you
windows.
like to have an umbrella?
Very well.
We have umbrellas
I did.
available for people.
I have every shade of my money.
be Mary.
Like if I want a board, I would say,
You won't
let's
need
wait
it if
another
you carry it.
year.
If you
Yes.
don't have
Right
it,
amount
you
of
need it.
money to do
Yes.
the job
Right,
right.
sprinkle when I came in.
You know, and
But they only have one
what's up
principal
with your-
person
is
who's
it your
it's been one
Yeah,
donation.
the
They
hip is
haven't
getting
even.
worse.
They haven't even gone out to
I'll
try
have
to
to
get
schedule
it.
the surgery.
If they wanted
Hmm?
London market,
had
it'd be
already.
wrong.
No, no, the right hip I had done.
Just like
Like I
close
said,
ups
years
of like the
ago,
wall,
and
the.
that's fine.
there's
So
no
you
matter
gotta
on
left
that
it done.
at all.
Very
And the
flat.
builder is
The
calling
doctor
the
didn't go ahead,
shots.
so.
Oh, I don't like a
We're hoping for
cupola,
that.
oh,
I
it's
see the doctor.
tacky,
I don't
or
like
I
this
like
rule.
black,
Yeah,
or.
I know.
I'm
Well, then we
shocked.
get to the busy
Well,
part
I'm
of the
shocked
season.
too, with the
I'd
lack
rather
of
see nothing
experience.
for another 5 years than a piece of
Last time I
garbage
had it done right after
that's
Yeah.
going to be reflecting badly on the house.
And my wife was
I
there.
agree.
Well, that, I don't
Ready and
they
ready.
chose the cheapest,
So I
it
thought,
looks
okay,
like,
well, I'll have it
you
done
know.
in
Yeah, they're really. She said that.
And so
October,
That's how they found
September,
us.
whatever.
Yeah, budget
And
is
the more
the
approach
budget
it was,
one,
but
and
as
it's
soon
a
as the
man and
doctor
his
said, I'm
wife
doing it.
running out of their
Matter of
house.
Yeah,
We'll go get a market.
I'm glad you asked that
You know,
question.
we're
Time
gonna
has
be-
You
come.
know, and then the next thing that happens is
Well,
that you're
you
going
have
to
to worry about
hear,
your
how could the
health.
ARB never approve this?
Well, we don't have to approve it, that's
No,
about, that's
I'm
gonna be
just-
that, I told
We'll
her,
get the
she-
probably in the
she
she
mail
wrote me back and said,
tomorrow.
well, in due respect, I don't think we
Well,
need, pretty much, we don't
it
need your
was the mail.
approval
I'm
to
sure
do
it's the
what
mail.
we need. I said, you're right, I
We
mean,
do.
right, but
She's
just,
have a
They didn't
no, she
send
said
out
like,
until-
we don't really need to show you guys
But we did, we.
as much stuff we need. I said, you're right, you don't have to show us anything, we are an advisory board. But it behooves you to show us the most, because in recent years, planning and zoning has started to take cues from us. So if we don't send a favorable report, the ZBA and planning and zoning will send it back. Now, because it's a
Yeah, that's
historical,
kind of
a
what it
historical
is.
site,
Okay, that's
all the more
enough.
reason they don't like us. So it behooves you to
Yeah,
work
we'll
with
put it in
us, and
tomorrow.
we're here as experts.
Enough
For
of her
custodians,
week. Well,
my
I-
sister, in an email.
Get us out of here.
Right, so-
Oh, yeah, she's laughing.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
wants
she's the one.
lights, but
That's not.
they're not considering the cupola. Like, it's all about light, it's all about light, and we don't want a cupola. And
So they said there was
then there aren't any cupolas.
And of course they're out of here.
I mean, it was completely circular.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Like, oh, in the summer.
Next time I'll wear my summer.
Where, what meeting, what board were we on?
I think it was